welcome back to the bench and welcome to this big project, this 1/32 scale conversion to the Spitfire Mark 8 into a 14. All starts in the cockpit and I'm adding a few little details here and there. Here are all the extra aftermarket parts and the kit parts. The Laminar Flow Design throttle quadrant is just a masterpiece. As you can see, the levers actually move, which is insane. Instrument panel from Yahoo, added a few bits of wiring here and there. That is the Barracuda cast or Barracuda Studios control column. That thing is just beautifully detailed. It's 3D printed, highly recommended. And even though I'm using all these aftermarket parts, it's still Tamiya at the end of the day. Everything fits just beautifully. Few extra holes drilled out here and there. All the plastic holes are kind of molded closed. Just the technology at the time, I guess. Simple job just to drill everything out with my wow stick. And that includes in the foot plate there. And then once everything's painted up in its component parts, it's relatively straightforward just to put everything together. Like I say, fits really well. There's the Barracuda Studio seat going on. It's got the airscale harness. That's a fiddle, but it's well worth it. All the sort of buckles and everything are separate etched brass, and you get paper sort of harness material itself. And so Spitfire's behind the seat. Everything was either natural metal or painted silver, silver lacquer. So make sure that section behind the pilot seat is natural metal, it's not green. Adding in all the smaller details now. So this is, I don't know, some electronic gizmo box thing. That's included in the Laminar Flow Designs set. Painted and decaled throttle quadrant. Starting to look busy. Talking of busy, wiring. I wasn't going to do any wiring, if I'm honest. Maybe just the cables coming out of the landing gear selector. But I caved in and I did it anyway. You can't really see very much. But yeah, looks nice when done, I will say. Lead wire is my kind of wiring of choice, really. And yeah, just easy to conform, takes paint easy. You see how busy that looks. With the cockpit mounted in the right hand fuselage half, we can put the left hand sort of lower cockpit bit in. Even though there's some extra detailing parts in there, some scratch building, still fits really well. Dry fitting as you go along is really going to help, actually. There are all the component parts. Thought I'd just show you that picture. There's quite a bit there, isn't there? Lower cockpit sidewalls all finished, and there it is mounting into the cockpit. Just note the oxygen hose there. That adds quite a lot, actually. Fills that gap nicely on the right hand side. That's in the Barracuda upgrade set. Onto the airframe now. And yeah, this stuff's a bit of a pain, actually. The hinges. Alright, it's you end up with movable hinges, but it's a monster pain in the bum. I wish Tamiya wouldn't have done this. I mean, it's fairly easy to go together. It's just a bit fiddly here and there, and a little bit tedious. What you will see as we go forward in the video is I've already removed the oil tank cover from the forward fuselage and the fin and the sort of bit around the fin, ready to take the resin parts. If I'm honest, I lost the footage, but you know, it's just took a fine razor saw, removed it, cleaned it up, job done. various different types of glue, using the bit of the Tamiya white cap, super glue for the metal parts, and you will end up with a slight seam because the join for some reason is sort of in the middle of the lower elevator, so I did end up putting a bit of Mr. Surfacer down the seam and sanding it flush just to hide all that. Bit of the main event now. This is gluing the fin into place. You can see how I've cut the tail there and the slot for the mounting spigot. I did cut back the mounting spigot actually because it does help with the fit. And then with it glued in place, a little bit of extra super glue here and there with the Infini files. Got these from Premium Hobbies. Absolutely brilliant, these ones. Using it up to sort of true the rudder area. Now I did, my fault, I pushed too hard at the front and snapped the front of the fin off and then couldn't find it. It's a bit of a pain. So I got some black super glue and some talcum powder and put that in place, and then when dry, filed and sanded, and you wouldn't know I'd broken it. So I was pleased with that little repair. A little bit of plastic card here and there, as you can see, just to fill some of the gaps. Now this set I'm using was the original moulding set, and Matthew at Laminar Flow Designs has tweaked the design ever so slightly just to improve the fit. So I'm looking forward to doing my next one whenever I get around to doing that. That's going to be the low back one. That should be even easier to fit. Little bit of a gap at the front. You do have to trim the upper plastic portions. I trimmed a little bit too much. It's just a little sort of shim you need to trim off, 1/2 mil, something like that. But just going in there and checking everything is square and true down the back end. The other main event is the nose. That fits really quite nicely actually. You get these pegs which fit into the kit sort of mounting support for the firewall, and then using these super glue applicators, which are really handy, you can poke that right up in the join and get that set into place. And then I will go in and I will back it up with 2-part epoxy, so araldite type stuff, just for extra strength. You can see there again, plastic shim just at the rear of the oil tank. And then what I'm not doing is I'm not gluing where that plastic card is, because that way I can set the width of the fuselage parts with the windscreen and then glue it in afterwards. Just using a bit of debonder just to get rid of some of the excess black super glue. That's the advantage of using black super glue. You can see where the mess goes, and it cleans it up a treat actually, that debonder stuff. You can see there on the left fuselage half, I filled in the radio hatch bay, sanded that, re-riveted it, and then re-scribed in the new radio hatch bay on the right hand side. This is the aforementioned epoxy epoxy glue going in, and that's going to give a really strong join. So here I am. I've added the plastic card mounting for the front of the windscreen there. You get a template in the kit, and then with dry fits and things I can go in and then I can hold that in place and just set the rear of the resin. So there is the completed fuselage, pretty much. A few other bits and bobs to go, but that's the main part of the conversion done. There's the radio hatch bay all filled in, scribed, sorry, not even scribed, re-riveted once sanded and polished. There's the new hatch. You get a really nice template. You can scribe that in, and then I added the piano hinge with a bit of sort of thin plastic rod at the top, cut with a scalpel. Fuselage out of the way, onto the wings. You get these extra E-wing gun covers supplied in the set, bulgeless, because with the E-wing The armament was the 20mm cannon and a 50 cal machine gun together in a pair, and then the 303s were deleted. So you get these extra gun covers. They don't have the bulges that you get with the associated 303 cannon parts. Obviously, if you're going to do a C-winged version, then just use the kit parts. You don't need this at all. This is available separately as well from Laminar Flow Designs. So if you want a Mark 9E, then you can just buy the cockpit upgrade set and this wing sort of conversion. Gluing it from the inside, that's going to help reduce the mess. A little bit of filler here and there. They didn't fit perfectly, but that's perfect because the real gun panels didn't fit perfectly. Just look at any real aeroplane, well, and the Qatari Spitfire. Follow their example. Now, what I should have done at this stage is blank off the outer sort of gun apertures, 303 gun apertures. I forgot. I did it later, during the painting, actually. Wing to fuselage join out with the Swedish blue clamps, trademark, as someone would say. They're available from Rebel Hobby. That's REBELL. They don't always have them in stock, actually. So if they're out of stock, just regularly keep checking, and then eventually you will you'll find that they're in stock and you could grab some. They're really, really useful. So with a fair amount of pressure, it has to be said, then we can go in with a standard liquid glue. Mine is Ammo by MIG. Not only is it great glue, the applicator is just absolutely perfect. It's really fine, but it's very long, so it holds a lot of glue. You'd be surprised how much it holds. But it's also very, very precise. You can see that also I've drilled out the hole for the ID light in the rear. What I forgot to do is fill in the Mark 8 light, which is for the forward, which is a bit of a pain. I ended up just ignoring it, to be honest. Choice of gun barrels. The resin, sort of late E gun barrels, or the early, I've got the brass master barrels. As you can see the difference. Looking at the pictures, it wasn't very clear, if I'm honest. But yeah, I did go for the long ones actually. But you can see there, the short ones, the later ones, they fit. And the brass ones fit just as well. And I ended up using those. Maybe I'm wrong for this particular aeroplane. I don't know. Needed to do a bit of a repair job on the carb intake, just at the bottom there. That was a little bit of black plastic card and then some super glue filler. Sanded to shape. And then again, you can see how useful the glue applicator is. I won't say it's essential, but it makes a huge difference. They're really good. Difference in order of doing things here from the 48th ones. The 48 ones, you'd actually glue that to the wing and then slot the wing into the fuselage. But on this one, just add it afterwards. A few little gaps here and there, easily cleared up with a bit of acrylic. Perfect plastic putty from Deluxe. Radiators go on now. Brilliant fit. The actual radiator faces are superbly printed. I nearly said molded then. They're printed. I just sprayed them with Alclad, I think Duralumin, and then added a black wash. So you'll see in a minute the sort of mesh type effect, and you also get that in the carb intake as well. It's actually printed on the one-piece carb intake right inside, which I think is really neat. And there you go. So you can see the mesh there. Note also the magnet in the spinner mounting. trailing edge of the radiator flaps go in. They're separate parts. And that's the airframe complete pretty much. Ready to fly off into the paint shop. All primed, useful to prime actually. This is Tamiya grey surface primer. It did get a little bit of a polish, not that it was needed if I'm honest. And now for the markings. And on this model I decided to paint them first. Just the roundels and the fin flash. So you can see I've already undercoated it in white. Ready for the yellow. That's RAF marking yellow. It's a kind of orangey yellow. And while I was at it, I did the leading edge stripes. Now I wish I did it afterwards in the end. But I think it would have been neater. But anyway. With the yellow down and masked off, we can go in with the red. I used RAF marking red, which was too red brown actually. I thought going over the yellow it'd brighten it up, but not enough, so I ended up having to go back in a little bit later and just added some Soviet FOD cover red, which is a much brighter red, over the top. Did a nice job of sort of fading the paintwork though. But you will see that the roundel is too far forward. I was following a photograph, not the photograph of my aeroplane, so some of them were in that position, but my aeroplane was in the standard RAF position. So I ended up repainting that after the camouflage. One piece mask for the tail. I always do this. I think it gives a much neater result than trying to line up the three separate parts perfectly. And very colourful overspray, so we need to get rid of that. Back in with the primer, decanted into the airbrush. I don't want any of the upper surface camouflage being affected by the underlying bright colours, so we'll just go and cover that up. Not forgetting the overspray on the tail. Right, so ammo A stand, brackets Alclad duralumin on the wing roots, and then I applied some, what was it, Mr. Masking Neo, just with a sponge for the chipping. I didn't go down the hairspray route on this one. Tamiya paints for the main camouflage. This really handy mixing thing that I got from Ed at Premium Hobbies. It's really good actually, it's sort of flexible plastic. Really good stirrer, and then you can just wipe it clean because it's very shiny. It's really cool. The medium sea grey is actually quite close to the primer grey. You've got to be quite careful. Make sure you know where you're going. A little bit of white added to it, and then we can go in and do some fading effects. Little bit of a random mottle along some of the panel lines. Some big sort of cloudy effects as well. I don't really like the marbling effects all over. It's a bit too homogeneous. Does that make sense? I think you know what I'm getting at. So try and keeping it random, and then a little bit of mottling here, a little bit of mottling there, some more cloudy effects. These are all the low lights going in. So I lighten the base coat and then I darken the base coat. And I try and exaggerate the effect as well, because we'll be using all the different techniques over the top. Varnish layers will blend everything together. All the oil paints and the washes and everything will all blend the base coat. So I tend to exaggerate it a little bit. This is the ocean grey going down. You can see again, highlights, lowlights. And then I've got these top-notch masks, which I had in the stash, so I thought I'd break them out. And then what I did is I put the masks on and then very lightly misted over the dark green. And you can see there, it just leaves a bit of a shadow. And now I've got a really accurate camouflage pattern that I can use for freehand camo. So obviously if you want a hard edge camo, then these are perfect. Just go ahead and put your opaque second colour down, but I wanted a very tight soft edge. So you can see there the shadow effect. Went over the whole model like that, and then very carefully put the masks back because I can use those for another project. I can see the final effect there, or say final effect, the effect you get, nice and accurate. So now I can go in and I can spray freehand and just use that as a guide for the demarcation. So again, this is the Tamiya paint, and you can see there with so this is my new Harder & Steenbeck Infinity 2024, even though I only got it this year. They only released it in 2025, but they updated their whole range, and I'm a bit of a convert, I will say. I've been a dyed-in-the-wool Iwata user, but I really do love this airbrush. It does struggle a little bit with these type of paints, I will say. MRP, not a problem, but a little bit of tip dry with the Tamiya, even though it's thinned with Mr. Hobby Thinner. But as long as I keep that tip flowing and clean, that's the kind of result you can get. Really tight feathered edge. No need for any of the kind of sausages or any of that technique. I can't give you a mixing ratio, I'm afraid, of paint to thinner or air pressures, anything like that. Number one, I've got a MAC valve on mine, so I adjust the air pressure. And number two, it all depends on the temperature and humidity of where you are as well, and your airbrush. Top tip though, start off with about 50-50. Reasonably high air pressure to get a very tight spray pattern, in really close, lots of air, not much paint. And then just experiment and adjust. Adjust the air pressure, adjust the thinner, adjust the paint ratio until you're happy. So you can see the effect there, just rubbing off the masking fluid. Really pleased with how that turned out, but I will add to it. This is always exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. Peeling off the roundel masks. Is it in register? Is it round? You can get some distortion, but I was really pleased with how they turned out. So these are one-man army masks. So Sven very kindly produced the markings for me. He also did the serials, letters, and the squadron marking, the comet on the nose, but unfortunately forgot to put them in the package, and then sadly I had to fly back to Saudi Arabia, and they're currently sat at home waiting for me, so I ended up designing my own. But yeah, massive thanks to Sven at One Man Army for producing those and supplying the Mark 8 stencils mask, which pretty much are the same stencils for the Mark 14 anyway. Yeah, not my neatest job of the yellow leading edge, but it'll do. You can see the open gun ports there. I'll fill those in later. There we are. That effectively is the base coat done. Now, we're going to jump forward in the project because, yeah, some of the footage did get corrupted. So this is what I've done so far. I've repainted the fuselage roundels. I've done the Cove serials and the Comet, the squadron marking. It's had a varnish coat and it's had the oil dot weathering. But all of that stuff you've all seen before. You can go and check most of my projects. You'll see the same techniques. But I will point you towards the Mark 12 project, and it's all detailed in there. Right, adding some dust now. The ammo oil brushes are just perfect for this kind of work. Don't put too much on. Better to do a couple of small coats, build it up rather than apply too much. But if you do apply too much, it's alright. You can just get rid of it with a bit of thinner and start again. Just whack it with a hairdryer there just to flash off the thinner. And you can see that kind of subtle dusty effect. If you look at pictures of Spitfires, especially wartime ones, you can see a bit of fuel leakage sort of underneath the oil tank cover, or the fuel tank cover. I keep saying oil tank cover, it was the fuel tank. And oil tank, actually. I think the oil tank was there. Maybe it was on the front of the engine. Can't remember. Anyway, very typical sort of staining you get from underneath the panel. So recreating that with essentially the dust tone, and then I'll go in with a dark tone just to kind of highlight the edges, and then cleaning it from the actual sort of fuel tank cover. Dirtying up the top, there'll be fuel spills, oil spills, that kind of thing going on around the fuel filler cap, and just blending in that oil paint, and then around some of the panel lines around the engine. Always want a sort of grimy looking engine area. Referring to photos though, you know, I do want to keep it realistic as much as I can, really. There is an element of artistic license, obviously, but you know, someone is bound to point out, oh, I think you're fine, and then someone will always post a picture. But there we go, that's the final effect, and I really like it. Nice and grimy, and you can see that sort of quite subtle fuel staining on the sort of lower panel there. Dust and mud effects now around the tail wheel. Tail wheel is going to kick up some sort of crap, even though this lightly operated from hardened runways and surfaces. It's still going to kick up dust and crap. These are the Master Barrels 50 cal machine guns. They just slot in. Now I've had quite a few nice comments actually on Instagram and my Facebook page when I posted up the final pictures of the model of the exhaust stain. So this is how I did it. This is a kind of sooty type tone. It's black and red brown. That's XF1, XF64 in the Tamiya range, thinned quite far down. And then just following the airflow pattern and looking at photos, it went all the way down to the tail. So that's the first layer. Why I had it in the airbrush, I thought I'd just add a little bit of grime underneath. You can see I've done quite a lot of oils under the center fuselage as well. So just around some of the removable panels. And then some kind of up and down streaking. And here we go. Here's a picture from my phone. So this is sort of high lead content. You get that sort of dusty, chalky effect. So there's a layer of MRP matte varnish to seal it in. Then a layer of hairspray. So decanted into the airbrush so I can be a little bit more accurate. And then I mixed up this tone from a bit of buff, bit of grey, bit of red brown, just to give a sort of warm tone to it. And then we'll just spray that over the top. In hindsight, really, I should have done a little bit above the exhausts as well. Maybe on the next one. So this is my chipping brush. It's a very old brush. I've had it since I was a kid actually. But it's quite stiff, and with just a bit of water we can just go in, reactivate the hairspray, and using a vertical motion we're adding the kind of I guess it's kind of rain marks over the top. Don't be too concerned if you take too much off, because I'm going to go over the top again and just add a sort of coat over the top just to soften the effect a little bit. There we go. I've taken a little bit too much off here and there, but like I say, no bad thing, because I'm going to go back in over the top and just do a bit of blendage. More opaque towards the front, obviously, kind of makes sense, and that's what you see in the pictures. And there we go. Really chuffed how that came out. And then a slightly darker tone now, so just adding a little bit of more red brown in there, tiny bit of black, and then I can just spray that in the middle of the exhaust, and you get that sort of layered effect, just like the real thing. Really chuffed how that came out. As I said, I just wish I did a little bit more above the exhaust. So go back, rewind, have a look at that picture, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, that is actually paint on the mirror. That's green stuff chrome. It's absolutely brilliant stuff. And now it's just a question of putting everything together. So that canopy opening widget, that's from the Barracuda Studio set. Is the prop all weathered up, and it's got the magnet in the end, and that just snaps on the front. And that is it. All done. Really hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, bye-bye.